My friends, let's be frank. Burnout is still a prevalent problem across American workforces today. And if we want a highly productive workflow and production, this, my friends, is an urgent issue that requires and demands our immediate attention. And I want to give you some statistical facts to buttress what I'm about to say. According to Microsoft and the Harvard Business Review, more than 50% of managers feel burnt out at work. According to Microsoft's most recent Work Trend Index, published in 2022, it revealed that more than half of managers, 53%, felt burnt out at work. Meanwhile, according to Forbes and a My Perfect Resume survey of over 1,200 U.S. workers, conducted to highlight the scale and impact of burnout, it revealed 88% of workers reported feeling burnt out at work, while another 1 in 5 consider leaving their jobs on a daily basis. So if you work in HR or are the head of people operations for your organization, today's discussion with my friend Jamal Marshall is one that you cannot afford to miss. He's the founder and CEO of Listen, Then Speak, where he tackles burnout at its root cause to double your time and maximize productivity. He's a certified counselor, public speaker, and podcast host who assists high-level CEOs and everyday people maximize the full height of their potential if they know how to set the appropriate boundaries on their time and emotional health. And Marshall joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. You're ready, Jamal? I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend, and I'm super excited to talk to you all about how you help people avoid the burnout, my friend. Great to see you, and happy Thursday to you, my friend.
Happy Thursday to you.
Absolutely. And Jamal, I know that your work helps people avoid or deal with burnout, my friend, at its core. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about your work, my friend, and what makes you so fabulous.
I love the way you said fabulous. So, I tackle burnout and stress at the root with proven methods to 2 extra time and maximize your productivity. And when I say maximize, I mean make you efficient. We know scientifically, when it comes to productivity, it's from an industry mindset of like how much can we get done and with how much can we continue to just produce and push out product versus efficiency says how can we get to the same finish line in half the time? And with clients, where is time getting lost? Where is their overperformance? We see the words high performance, and in a lot of circles, when you don't see what lies beneath, high performance is seen as a good thing. And I would say in order to run a business in a sense, you need to be a high performer. But for many, unwittingly, they don't realize that their high performance is a trauma response. And so actually going through some specific time auditing and then dealing with the root cause of what they believe in their subconscious that's causing them to behave in a way that they may hit a wall sooner or later. So, and not only are we saving time, we're also saving revenue because where we waste time, we don't realize all that excess equals money as well. So whether you're a business owner or whether you're a person within your career, you know, I work with a lot of senior leaders, VPs, as well as middle managers, um, and helping them to manage themselves. One thing I say is we take the NT off management. It's like before you or while you're managing this team of 50 to 25 to 100 or multiple teams, learn first to manage yourself, so that you have a team that's actually thriving. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And to that point, my friend, what do you think it means to maximize self-care as a manager or a leader? Just to a follow-up on what you just said. What do you think it means to maximize self-care as a leader or a manager?
Oh, that's a great question, Kevin. I think what it means is if you think about like when we cut on the TV or we cut on the internet, obviously we're loaded down with what? Ads. And so, in the last 4 or 5 years, I'd say, Kevin, we are seeing a ton of stuff about, better health, self-care, mental health. The stigma is no longer what it used to be. We lived in a time, especially when we were growing up, when no one talked about mental health. No one really talked about self-care. You just powered through and you got it done. And so in this day and age, when there is the stigma is being broken, it's a little bit more of an open door for that. A lot of it's surface level. And so I would say, I'm going to be very blunt. Self-care is not a bubble bath. Self-care is not, oh, let me just get some extra hours of sleep. You don't sleep away burnout. It literally is a subconscious mindset found deep within your inner sanctum. There are root causes that need to be dealt with. And so I think maximizing self-care is when you begin to detect a certain pattern of activity in your life, as a leader or in the way that you manage your teams or multiple teams. That's when you actually go and check in. It doesn't have to be a counselor. It could be a coach, could be a mentor, could be an advisor, but actually dealing self-care means actually making the investment in your personal development. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And my friend, I also wanted to get your thoughts on this, and I have to tell you, I struggle with this myself. And, according to the American Psychological Association, my friend, between 35 and 60% of people struggled to say no this year when they were asked to do things by other people. And of course, the younger generation had more difficulty doing this in 2022 at a rate of 66%, my friend. So I'm curious. I'm sure you're not surprised by these numbers, but how do you think we should analyze these numbers and give ourselves grace to say no? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, one, I want to just say I appreciate you bringing data because we both know people lie, but the numbers don't. And I would say if you think about where we've been in the last 10 years as a society and how we've gone, especially in the last 4 to 5 years, very digital, our minds have been rewired slowly but surely for immediacy. And that's why it can be so hard to say no. Think about the mid 80s, early 90s when I say you and I came up. You didn't have immediacy. We passed notes to girls in school hoping that they would see them. You literally couldn't call a person's home after 9:30 p.m. That was considered rude. We had to be in during the street lights. We didn't have access to these devices, this thing that I'm holding in my hand. We didn't have that immediacy. And nor did we have social media. And when we did get social media, it didn't function on a scroll basis where there's always something changing. So the mind has been reprogrammed for I get it now. I mean, if you think about even the advent of the early 2000s of texting, sending a text means I'm texting you something and I'm going to get an immediate response. We don't even realize how much that we've been reprogrammed as a society. And you take it down to Gen Z and the younger millennials, that's the only reality that they know. And so they don't really know how to not just only hear no, but they don't know how to say no because that no is usually met with a lot of resistance, therefore reinforcing the cycle of burnout. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jamal, what do you think is the secret to setting effective boundaries, my friend, to really put ourselves first and be grounded in self-reflection, my friend? What do you think it means to set effective boundaries?
I like the second part of the question. You said the secret. There's no silver bullet. And honestly, Kevin, it's going to change from person to person, because one size doesn't fit all. If you think about this, you and I have both been given a unique fingerprint by God. So that means the way you process intel is different from the way I process intel. Not to mention, you and I did not grow up in the same household. We both had different upbringings. And so I've had things that have nurtured a certain mindset in me that have been reinforced with my own nature that it needs one reason why the one-on-one work I do is so effective is because I'm tailoring it to the client specific needs. So I would say uh, some effective tips in setting boundaries is learning one and making the investment in your mental health and your wellness and your personal development. Two, also learning what your motivations are, what drives you. When we learn what drives us, then we know how to address what drives us. We learn how to satisfy specific psychological and physiological hungers. We come from a hunter-gatherer society. So what does that mean? That means your hunger drives you. Their hunger drove them to kill and eat and to do things for survival, for shelter. Whatever our hunger is, if we have a hunger to be accepted, we may be driven to always say yes. If we have a hunger to not be rejected, we'll be driven to live our lives and conduct ourselves, our careers and businesses in a way where we don't kick up any dust. And so find out what your drivers are, what your motivations are, so you can address them effectively. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jamal, you mentioned that you worked with a lot of leaders of businesses and corporations, my friend. And I'm curious to get inside the mind of a business owner or a corporate leader and ask you what are people telling you about why they work themselves to the point of burnout, and why do you think most people forget about taking care of themselves? Do you think it's the service mindset or the wanting to get things done from a production standpoint? What do you think it is, and what are leaders telling you today, buddy? I'm curious.
No, I'll let you in on as much as I can from to not breach confidentiality.
Absolutely.
Leaders are today, it's a little bit of both of what you said, the service mindset and the production mindset, but that's kind of on the surface. Deep down at the core, I always tell each of my clients, we need to go back before we go forward. I'm a certified counselor, so that gives me the ability to actually take them back. I don't just coach here and now because it's like here and the now is symptomatic of who you have been and who you were. And so when we actually take that time to go back, I find out in their childhood, they may have been raised by a narcissist. They may be in a state of grief. It could be any number of things. There may have been some verbal abuse. There may have been neglect or rejection. Or there may have been some cultural things where they felt rejected by the surrounding majority. And so you factor in all of these differences, and then I have to take services and actually tailor it specifically to what the need is, not to mention the goal mechanism for our time together to make sure that they get tangible results that are measurable. Now, to answer your question, what are they telling me? They're telling me things like, hey, in my childhood, I always felt like I had to be the answer man. I always felt like I had to be the voice of reason, the one that everyone depended on. I had to power through things and not ask a whole lot of questions. So you take that narrative as a child, and then you marry that to an adult version of you who is now in a career or running a business. And those very same things, as we have adults, grown adults, let's say the adult is the Mack truck, but you have a little 5-year-old to 12-year-old child who is driving that truck. The child that has had issues that have been unaddressed is still in the driver's seat. And that produces overdrive of activity. And where there's an overdrive of activity, you are going to hit the wall at some point. So these are some of the running themes of what leaders are saying to me. Like, how do I then take all that I have, the post that I have to man, and then manage my time effectively while still making sure I have the emotional intelligence to move forward. I
Yeah,
hope that makes.
yeah, absolutely. And my friend, I'm curious to ask you about from a personal perspective. I know that you are still working on being a constant people pleaser, and something from your past that allowed you to always be in the demand of other people before you put yourself first, my friend. So I'm wondering, from a personal perspective, what drives you to do this work, my friend?
Uh, yeah, what drives me is my own story. I mean, I grew up, pretty much 90.10% of my clients are past versions of me. And so I grew up in a house that was very unstable. I had one parent who was absolutely divine, which was my mother, and then another who was a heroin addict and a cocaine addict and an alcoholic, which was my dad. And so all of that instability produced unpredictability. And when things weren't predictable, I wanted to bring as much predictability and control as possible. So I didn't realize that in, being the one surrogate spouse, being the surrogate brother, or surrogate father, really, and playing all these roles that were way ahead of my time, that I was running at breakneck speed to make sure that we never troubled the water or kicked up any dust. And I carried that into my career, into the way I chose a romantic partner, just a lot of different facets in life, and I hit the wall. I burned out. Even when I left earlier, I started in the government at the Department of Justice. I left there and began to do work at a very fast-paced nonprofit, and I was one of three senior counselors. And I just remember we had a whole split in the nonprofit where half the staff left, and that just left me, me and the other half staff that remained to take double the load. Not only did my caseload of clients double, but also was given a whole remote program to manage, which I did a great job actually leveling it up and making it more than it had ever been. But I also was going out externally facing into prisons, and teaching classes there. And so it was a lot on me. And I remember getting pulled into the office by the director. And he said, we feel that, some of the clients and students here don't have enough access to you. Well, let me tell you, Kevin, I was ticked off because I was like, I'm the first to get here and like one of the last people to leave. I have done the best that I can to make sure to ensure that everyone here has a really good experience in this transformation when they leave here. And my thoughts were riveting at this point, and I didn't understand that I'd lived most of my life to please people, that I had uh, even through going through my own healing process and becoming a counselor, I still had a disease to please where I gave people too much access to myself, and therefore building the narrative in their mind that whenever I wanted personal space and time, then something was wrong. And so I then had to go back to the drawing board, on my own, and do some masterminds, go through some deeper counseling. And once I, went through some even deeper counseling, this was after becoming the counselor and some masterminds, and I began to see the root causes, deeper root causes of my own disease to please, and the fact that I was actually losing time. I wasn't, even though people had so many access points to me, it showed poor time management because I was trying to put out fires that weren't even mine. And I had to learn to establish boundaries to move forward effective in a sustainable manner. Now, when I had gone through these masterminds and these extra classes and different things like that, it renewed my attitude about my job, where I was able to set up an environment where I could thrive, my clients could thrive, and also to make sure that we functioned optimally. You have teams even now, whether corporate or in business, that they don't function at an optimal level because people are hitting a wall. They're not only overworked, but they're not addressing the issues that are leading to overwork from a systemic standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joel, I'm curious if you have sort of a checklist or principles that you work through your clients with in terms of assessing what type or how bad the burnout is, my friend. So I guess what I'm asking is, how can leaders assess if they're burned out or not? What questions should they be asking themselves if they want to really sort of rebalance their life and their workday, my friend?
There are three things that I want people to take away. Um, and three things that I do. Before asking yourself questions, you have to know why. A lot of people don't know what question to ask. And because there are different, one size doesn't fit all when it comes to high stress, burnout, which leads to all sorts of different addictive behaviors. And everyone is different. So I want to make sure I don't blanket this. But I would say number one, develop trigger awareness. And I go into a whole litany of what that means. You know, a trigger is any event that elicits a reaction. What caused you to react that way? And why did you react that way? And where are you losing time, money, opportunity, or wellness and resilience in said reaction? Develop trigger awareness. Many of us don't know what triggers us, or we haven't sat down and define it, or there's a outstanding pattern of triggers that have never been addressed. Develop the awareness. That way it puts you ahead of the game. Two, find a different escape route. I liken it to this. Kevin, we met not too long ago, but when I came on the map, I wasn't on social media for the better part of most of my life. I didn't get on until 2020. But what put me on the map was these people would see these videos of me walking in nature. And I would always be in the woods. Now, here in DC, we have well dug paths. This is a Civil War forest, so they've been there for over 200 years. If I wanted to take a different route, I would literally have to take out a machete to find a different route through the forest. And so, in working with clients, I say we take out our mental machete and we have to dig you a new narrow pathway. Find a different escape route because we're used to taking a certain route that always makes us comfortable. And when we take that, we literally dug ourselves in a quicksand. That's how the pattern continues to get reestablished.
Yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely, my friend. And Jamal, I wanted to share a story with you, my friend. So, I'm sure you know by now that I was born with cerebral palsy, and at the age of 9, my friend, I was told that I would never walk again for the duration of my life because of the severity of my disability. And when I graduated college, I was rejected by 10 consecutive news directors that wouldn't hire me to be a sports reporter because I originally went to school to become a sports reporter. And they told me at the time because of my disability. Now, I graduated college. I'm going to age myself here, Jamal. So if I shed a tear, that's why. I graduated college about 15 years ago, buddy. And we've certainly made advancements now, but when I graduated college, news directors told me I was qualified, but they wouldn't hire me because of my disability. So the reason I became a speaker was partly out of necessity because nobody else would hire me, but also because I looked at the world and I said people that look like me aren't getting hired in jobs. So I turned rejection into a positive, my friend. So how do you think we can help leaders and those that work under leaders get over the fear of rejection? Because adversity is going to happen to all of us, right?
you're so right about that. One, I just want to salute you for sharing your story, man. That's powerful, bro. And I love the fact that you have turned what is seen as a negative into a superpower. And I would say again, and I know it may feel a little redundant, but I want to be mindful for everyone under the sound of my voice and everyone in your audience that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to getting over or getting through the fear of rejection, because it is a huge fear for most people, even those who don't admit it. Um, if you're not at the place where you can actually make the investment, because that's a great place to start because you're going to already isolate the root causes of what's really causing it. But if you're not, I would say one tip is get used to being uncomfortable. Because the very fear that we have that we avoid we never test the water, you know. Um, the short story, I remember being a little boy and my sister, she wasn't afraid to get in the water, but I was smaller than her because I'm the youngest. And so I would hold on to the wall. I never let go of the wall. And it wasn't until my dad said, "Hey, if you come to me, I'm going to catch you. I'm not going to let you go under." Um, and trusting that he would not let me go under, which he didn't, helped me to test those waters. And so the very thing that you're afraid to do, test the water. You will find that like, oh, that really wasn't that bad. And even if you didn't get the results that you were looking for, you still tried. That
Hmm.
you're still sending a signal to your brain that, oh, I still did that. I can do that again. So I just want to share that that's one thing. Get used to doing things that are very uncomfortable. Two, begin to do the work of measuring what you're expecting from other people. Because sometimes when we fear rejection, we are expecting them to accept us. We feel like we need something from them. And then doing the hard work. Why do I need something from you? Who exactly are you that I need something from? And again, that'll change from person to person. You know, because when it comes to a career and a job, for some people, it's their bread and butter. But when you lead with an energy that is insecure, that's going to probably be what some of us get back, depending on the person. And three, I would say in overcoming the fear of rejection, take time to journal. You know, I tell each one of my clients a phrase that I trademark, what you write down, you have to reckon with. And it be when something comes out of the gray matter of our mind and lands on paper, it actually takes on a reality that we then have to deal with. You know, whatever we don't deal with, what's not healed or what's not revealed will not be healed. That's what I want to say. That's our
Yeah,
moment. What is not revealed will not be healed. Let it get revealed on paper and then take the extra measures to deal with it. I'm just giving you guys a primer. But if you really want to deal with that in a way that helps you maximize your time and two extra productivity and build your career and build your business, hire somebody that knows what they're doing.
it makes a difference, doesn't it?
That's why I do what I do.
Yeah. And Jamal, I'm going to make you happy again because I'm going to provide you with some more statistics, my friends, from the Society of Human Resources Management. You know, their mental health and their research series for 2024 was released in May for Mental Health Awareness Month, and it found that 44% of about 1,405 CEOs or founders who were surveyed felt like they were burned out because of their work, and another 45% felt emotionally drained from what they do at work, and then finally, 51% felt like the company had used them up or disposed of them once they were done with what they could squeeze out of them, my friend. So I'm curious, how do you interpret those facts and figures, and what do you think it says about today's American workplace?
Well, let's go back before we go forward, Kev. Um, in many of the workplaces and in some of the entrepreneurial spaces, let's not be ignorant of that. There still exists the industrial mindset. And we know the industrial mindset was where we get the 9 to 5. You know, you get your 15-minute early break, your 30-minute lunch break, and then your 15-minute break at the end of the day. We know that that is actually counterproductive, but you still have so many corporate organizations and nonprofits that function that way. And you do also have some businesses that function that way. I know all three. I've worked corporate, I've worked nonprofit, large and small, and I've also ran business. So each one of those, you know, involve their own different stresses. And so breaking that industrial mindset and saying, you know what, it's actually not effective to work your people, your greatest asset till they go down to the bone. I literally used to work in a factory back in 2010. For 7 months, I worked in a factory in the Midwest. And I can tell you, it is very industrial. When one person doesn't do their job, it messes all the rest of us up. When one cog in the wheel is bad, it literally slows down and plugs production. But you still have workplaces that are functioning like this. And so their employees, both their bottom and their top line, You got folks who are entry level all the way up to the C-suite who are saying, I can't do this anymore because my body cannot function at these hours. And so there literally needs to be systemic change. Now, granted, there's some things we're not in control of. So how do we address that? And that's where I come in, getting leaders to manage themselves in the midst of the chaos that can often seem unmanageable.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Jamal, I'm also curious to ask you about the importance of our internal actions, my friend, to live a more balanced life and achieve more victories. Because I am a firm believer that if you don't have internal motivation, I don't care if you're a leader or if you work for somebody else, if you don't have internal motivation, living a balanced life is something that you'll struggle with, my friend. So tell me, how do you think we can take better control of our internal actions to live a more balanced life?
One thing I want to do, one, that's a beautiful question, Kevin. But I want to take out the B word. And I know that that's a word that we use in wellness spaces. It's just a word that's common in our English vocabulary. But and a word that will, most of us hashtag in the wellness space for branding, work-life balance. But I'm gonna say something very controversial. Work-life balance is non-existent. Let's just
Uh,
put that on the table.
for the record, I agree with you, by the way. Go ahead.
Wonderful. So, with work-life balance being its non-existent self, and you think about all the different amalgamations of people who enter into the workforce or outside of that into the entrepreneurial space, people just are different. And so, what I say is you develop something else, a trademark, work-life rhythms that are nuanced to the season that you are in. So, I've had clients ranging everywhere from a 25-year-old male to a 71-year-old female, all from different backgrounds and ethnicities and races. I started off mostly with white males. Now I have all different females of color. 60% of my clients are mostly female. And so that's given me a wealth of experience to understand that a young man who is 27 living in the city can get up, take his little bike, and ride to work after doing an hour or so at the gym, you know, that he's done since he's been up at 4:30 and be home by 5 o'clock and still have energy. A young mother, about 37, 38 years old, who is on her third child, who's a nursing mother, is going to have a completely different rhythm from him. Also, an older business owner, who's in their 50s and 60s and they're really getting their business and their consulting going. They're going to have completely different rhythms. And so we develop tailored rhythms, nuanced to the season that we are in. And when we divorce ourselves from this work-life balance and this fallacy, we stop comparing ourselves with curated images of what is really non-attainable as it is in reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jamal, I want to ask you about the power of resilience. I shared part of my story earlier with you, but I'll share the last part of it, my friend. So when I graduated college, my friend, I graduated June 18th of 2010, and I didn't get my first paying job until February 1st of 2016, my friend, because of my disability. But I truly believe that resilience is the answer to the test of adversity. So when I talk to business leaders, a lot of them tell me I'm an inspirational person after, or I go through the mechanisms of my story, but I simply tell them that I live my life, and if I'm inspirational, that's great. But I wanted to ask you about the importance of using resilience as a superpower as we go through the funny parts of our lives. What are your thoughts there?
I think resilience is birthed in the furnace of affliction. um, I need to coin that.
Yes, and then you can cash yourself another check once you get the trademark. Okay.
Well, um, it is resilience is birthed in the furnace of affliction, and the very things in your life and my life and the lives of others that we wouldn't have signed up for are the very things that build our character and ability to bounce back. I think it's the things that if we look back and we are talking to God, or whoever you believe in, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus. You say, I didn't sign up for this. This is not what I asked for, you know, but this is what we've been handed so that our story can not only be an inspiration for someone else, but that so we can reach back and pay it forward. And I think for those who are under the sound of my voice, where you make peace with that, you know, that there's a certain card that you have been dealt for the sake of other people, but also the sake to build a platform that you stand on, that's when you began to make moves that are actually uniquely yours that God has already chosen you for. I'm telling you, the stuff I do now, I love what I do. I love the brand, the business, and everything that's being built out. But I wouldn't have written my story. I wouldn't have gone through those traumatic years with my dad. And one thing I didn't mention is that I led my dad to Christ, and we became best friends for the last 12 years of his life. But in 2017, sadly, he passed away after complications with his liver and kidneys and a stroke. And I miss him terribly. But if I had it my way, he'd still be here, And so even that gave me deeper roots, him not being here. And so I want to say to your audience, resilience is never something that you get with some sort of cortisone shot in the arm or in a motivational quote. It's something that comes over time. Yeah, I'll leave that there.
Yeah, well, we all have our own personal identities, and I appreciate you sharing that, Jamal. One of the things that I always say that the great thing about life is that it's not a forever certainty. So it increases the urgency of the moment for sure. Absolutely, my friend, and I appreciate that. But I also wanted to ask you about emotional courage, in establishing your own personal identity, because I also think it's important to separate yourself from work and come up with other hobbies and interests, because if you don't have the emotional courage to think beyond your 9 to 5 or whatever you get your income from, it's difficult to prosper as a person. So I'm curious to ask you about the importance of emotional courage in establishing your own personal identity, buddy. Give me your thoughts there.
I think that answer, I know we've gone pretty heavy for most of this podcast, but that answer is actually pretty simple. What do you like to do?
Fair enough.
Different things that we just like to do. Those who have followed my business and brand for the better part of 4 years now, because that's how I've been doing it, know I'm very outdoorsy. I hate being cold, but I love being outdoors. I love being in nature. I love hiking, I haven't swam. I used to be on the swim team. I haven't swam in years, but I love the water. There's just certain things that I love. What do you like to do? Some people like to draw. Some people like to do a Sudoku. Some people it's different things that people like to do. Some people are gamers. Be careful with that. You don't want to increase the screen time after you're done with your business, but find things that you like to do and do them often. Just as often, it may be a little bit of an quote unquote balance in what you can do with your business because a certain time dedicated to things, but do that thing so that the brain is getting signals of there's a reward. There's a reward mechanism for your labor. Don't just labor till you run yourself into the ground. Get out and do that thing that you like to do and then write about it and then plan for it. Because a lot of times, those of us who, let's say if you're married, you have kids, or if you're a single person that has a really full schedule, sometimes the things don't get scheduled, they don't get done. You may have to find yourself scheduling downtime and scheduling recreational time and putting that on your calendar. I do it just to make sure, because if I don't block my calendar, if I don't schedule it, someone will schedule it for me, and we don't want that.
Well, Jamal, I'll tell you a quick story, and then I got three questions left for you, then I'll get you out of here. But
I used a lot of questions today.
Yeah, I find it to be fascinating, buddy. But I'll tell you a quick story. So I reevaluated that. So I used to work at the YMCA, buddy. And for better or for worse, my boss's desk was directly next to mine. So I had sent her an email to a response to a question that she had asked me at 8 o'clock at night. And then the next day she looked at me and she said, I close my laptop from work at 5 or 4 o'clock, and I don't look at it until the next day. And just because an email doesn't get into your inbox doesn't mean you have to answer it immediately. So I have to tell you, my friend, I'm a recovering perfectionist, okay?
Well, you're preaching to the choir. So, and I had to learn that. I remember I was working for investigations and anti-human trafficking. It's a work that's always just going. It's always in motion, and it's a part of a global organization. And I remember just keeping my WhatsApp open, keeping Teams open. And a certain coworker of mine, she said, you know what? When your leaders and managers, when they go home and close their laptop, they're not thinking about you. Why are you giving so much thought to them? Close the laptop, close the workstation down, go home and be done and be free.
Well, it's something that I'm still learning, but I am getting better. But I wanted to. The last substantive question I have for you before I ask you about your podcast and your legacy is this, my friend. I wanted your perspective on the notion that success is an experience resulting from a process that we navigate independently, my friend. What are your thoughts on that notion, and how do we sort of define our own level of success resulting from navigating life? What are your thoughts there?
I'm gonna keep the answer really simple, and this may go over the heads of some of the listeners, and it may hit people right in their heart. Uh, it's difficult, especially depending on your age, to forecast too far in the future. But think about today and your final day. Maybe the day where you're in the hospital and you're not, you're in your mid to late 90s and you don't have the optimal health you've always had, or something's happened. God forbid anyone get cancer, God forbid. Um, and your funeral or your transition into the next life, into eternity is impending. What do you want to be said about you? And what do you want to just kind of be able to rest in? That, I know a lot of us may talk about revenue. We need that to keep a roof over our heads. For goodness sake, I live in DC. It's not cheap to live here. But what do you ultimately want to be said about you? That you just had millions of dollars and millions of followers on social media? The minister, whoever's conducting your service, is not going to talk about that. That will not count on your last day. And so think, what does success mean to me? And that doesn't mean not, storing up revenue, building out a business, living out your dreams, but think about the impact you want to leave behind. And that's going to be different from person to person. So whoever that hits, I pray it rests well with you.
Yeah, and the last questions I have for you, my friend, are about your podcast. I know that you host a podcast called Listen Then Speak, my friend, where you dive into many of the topics that we've talked about today. So tell me about your podcast, and then finally tell me, when it comes to your own individual and personal legacy, how do you want that to be defined?
Got it. Thanks for asking about the podcast. So yes, you can find us on every platform. We're not yet on video on YouTube yet, but we do plenty of video teasers. So we're on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, you name it. And we cover topics of burnout, of high stress, of career and entrepreneurial journey. I'm interviewing, book authors, some of the best-selling book authors, business moguls, people from our talent acquisition, from the HR space, from the tech space. And I'm loving every minute of it. In the coming new year, we're going to actually be dropping a lot of solo episodes and series along with those interviews to really give people a full package. And it's also going to be going through a bit of a name change. So it'll still be Jamal from Listen Then Speak, but it'll be the Leaders Burnout Blueprint, because we really want to give people a blueprint for tackling stress and really auditing their time while maximizing their efficiency. So I'm super excited about what's to come and super excited about what we've done in the podcast, as well as the business. I work as a counselor, a certified counselor, and a consultant. So it has drawn so many people, not just into the ecosystem, but into life transformation, transforming their businesses and transforming their careers. So
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me about your own personal and professional legacy, my friend. How do you want your eulogy to be written, my friend?
That's a great question. Honestly, Kevin, he did what he could. As somebody who grew up trying to do everything, and even in my younger 20 something years, I'll be 40 pretty soon. Um, I try to do everything and to be all things to all people. And that was very bad spiritual, physical, and psychological hygiene. And so now going forward, he did what he could, where he could. That's what I want my epithet to be. And he lived for the glory of God.
Yeah, well, it's a simple but profound mission statement, my friend. And I wish you well on your journey of that. But tell me, my friend, if people want to get connected with you, my friend, what's the best way they can do that?
Easiest way to get connected with me, type in my name, Jahmaal. I'm the only Jamal that spells my name the way I do on LinkedIn. I'm super easy to find. Get LinkedIn with me there. You can find out about my services and executive coaching and counseling, as well as if you want to get me as a public speaker and how to book me for those services. Something I want to leave your audience with is a bit of a freebie, and it'll be down in the show notes. But it is going to be a little some tips on how to mitigate burnout. 3 tips on mitigating burnout. So I want to leave them with that freebie as well, and they can keep up with me there. So yeah,
Well, fabulous, my friend. I want to thank you for the good work that you do to help people live a life of burnout free stress, my friend, and really leveling, optimizing up our personal development and growth, my friend. You're doing amazing work, and I felt privileged to engage in conversation with you this afternoon, buddy. Thanks for stopping by.
Kevin, thanks for having me, and thanks for asking such good questions that unearthed so much out of me. Like, and normally people don't pull this much out of me, man. So you did a great job pulling this out of me, man. You're phenomenal.